Good morning, New Brunswick exporters. We are waiting for our last attendees to log on, and we'll be starting the webinar at exactly 11 o'clock. So keep plugged in, and we'll be starting just on time. Speak soon. Good morning, New Brunswick exporters. This webinar is for you, and we're delighted to be here today to talk about website localization, how to use websites, how to use your online media and online presence to really grow your sales and exports, and what tools are available out there. Well, first of all, I think we're just going to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm the Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. I'm really delighted to be here with you today. And I've been with IBT for quite a few years now. I have to say as well, I have French. I would be delighted as well to answer or present in French if you prefer. Please, know that we can answer questions in French or in English. I'm sitting at the moment in London, in our London office, but have had the pleasure to go out and visit New Brunswick and sort of the Atlantic provinces, and I would love to come and visit you all. I'm sorry I'm not there today. My colleague Samantha Sofici, that you have there in the middle of your screen, is also online, and she will be talking a bit later and can answer some questions for you if you like. She's actually based in the States. We also wanted to give a special shout out to Opportunities New Brunswick, to Irina Russell and Suzanne Terrell, who've been really fantastic at helping to organize this and reach out to you all to talk about some of our favorite subjects, which are online tools and online tools for exporters like websites and online media. So again, we're delighted to be here, and thank you very much. I should also say a couple of words just really quick about who we are as a company. So the company's name is IBT. I stands for International Business and Technologies. IBT Online, and our website, ibt.onl. We are a private company. We're a US company, although we have offices in Europe, in France, in the UK, in Germany, and as well as that, we have outreach in China, the Middle East, and South America. And what we do is we are 100% focused on small and mid-sized companies and how to help them export by using online tools like websites, like online media, like social media. So we are 100% dedicated to small and mid-sized companies, to the international environment, and to the online environment. So that's our sphere, and that's what we do. And as I said, we're absolutely delighted to talk to New Brunswick exporters about that today. A couple of quick words just on housekeeping before we actually start our presentation. Just on housekeeping, just know that this is one of a series of webinars that we've put together to help our clients and to help exporters grasp tools and understand more about what they can and can't do on the web for business. So if we have a lot of resources on our website. You've got the website address up there. They're all free, downloadable, and I would encourage you to browse around and see what there is for that. That could be of interest to you. This webinar, I've planned it for 50 minutes, and I would really love it to have some questions from you as well. There's a little sort of toolkit on the side of your screen there that says chat box. And in there, you can drop your questions in, and I'll curate them at the end and answer them. Anything that we don't have time for, we'll get back to you directly. So there you go. So we will be getting back to you if we don't have time, but please drop your questions in there. During the webinar, we'll have 3 polls, and this is really just to make sure you're all participating. Help us also understand where you are in terms of exports and in terms of website localization. We will also have some handouts for you towards the end of the webinar, and at the very end we have a very, very, very brief survey. Really appreciate if you could just answer that survey. So, last but not least, you will all be receiving a copy of the recording and this slide deck in your email boxes tomorrow. So happy reading for the weekend, I guess. So that means that you can just sit back, enjoy. You don't have to take notes or anything else. It'll all come to you in your mailboxes tomorrow. So here we go. Let's talk about some website localization. So what we've done is divide this into like 4 areas. First, to talk about why exporters need international websites, what we see as those reasons that allow them to need to have international websites. And then we're going to say, what are these international websites? What is website localization? What does it actually mean? Thirdly, we're going to see how exporters use localized websites. We're going to take some of the case studies from our clients and show you this is what a client has done. That's quite interesting. Here's another client with a different model, so that you can really get a broad spectrum of how exporters use localized websites to pull up their exports, to really dive into export markets. And then the last bit, we've put together a couple of sort of takeaways, if you like, and reserve some time for Q&A. So there you go. That's the question right now, the agenda right now. And I'm going to actually start just to make sure that you're all, all out there and engaged here. I'm going to start by launching a poll. So this poll, get your mice ready, and I'd like you to answer this poll. What are your main export challenges? What are the main things that really bother you as an export manager? Everyone who replied to this webinar is presumably interested in exporting, so I'm sure that you already have some experience. Just to give you some feedback, it's actually very well distributed. Some of you do have problems with tariffs and regulations, but I'd say the biggest single issue you have, finding the right local partner and brand awareness lead generation. Those 2 come up as major challenges for the exporter, and that's something we find throughout most markets as well. So again, and now I think most of you have voted. 2/3 of you have difficulties finding the right local partner, and half of you have problems with brand awareness, lead generation. So those are the two major items, and I think that's really going to be very interesting in how we do today's webinar. So let's start, and I thought how we could start, given that it's 11 o'clock in the morning in New Brunswick, and that I really appreciate that you missed your coffee break to come out here. I just thought we'd just have a quick sort of, quick look at how, well, guess what, a cookie break. We'll just have a quick look at some websites, and we'll do it in a way which try to make you feel, okay, I don't see Susanna in person, but we can all have a sort of virtual cup of coffee and a cookie as we talk about why exporters need localized websites. So here we go. Here's our cookie test. These are really quick little slides. Just want to take a quick look at them and tell me which ones appeal to you. This one, I'm half German, by the way. Schokoladegebäck. These are great. All of them are wonderful cookies. This is obviously some of my favorites. I also have French. Bonne maman. And the French actually do say cookies. Les cookies, chocolat noisette. Fantastic. This one is one of my colleagues' favorite. Doesn't look like chocolate to me. And I'm really confused because 1688 is actually a B2B portal for China, but she says no, she's bought chocolate cookies on this and tastes really delicious. I find it really hard to engage with that one. Sam's Club, these look good, but I was a bit amazed at the price. $107 for some chocolate cookies. What is that? And then my Mexican colleague said, no. In Mexico, you write pesos with a dollar sign. Oh, I didn't know that. These ones, New Brunswick's finest. Mrs. Dunster's, she's actually specialized in donuts, and cookie cutters make ginger snaps, but apparently they're fantastic. Neither of them can be bought online, unfortunately, but I'm sure they taste delicious. I'm sitting in the UK. I don't actually look for chocolate biscuits. Cookies. I look for biscuits. I don't look for chocolate cookies. So chocolate biscuits, these are some of the best around Fortnum & Mason's. So a quick look, what websites would you buy your chocolate biscuits from, and why? Which are the ones that engage you? Which ones give you the feeling of trust that you need for that buyer experience? So this is sort of a slightly facetious way of saying, one needs to be aware of the person searching. You need to be aware of your end client, and just let's look back a little bit and say, what about the web today? Where are we on the web today? I know that you, like I, probably spend all your time on the web, but is everyone else doing the same? Well, it's interesting looking at some of the big picture numbers. In 2018, we actually broke through the 4 billion level, the 4 billion mark. Over 4 billion people in the world now have access to the internet. That doesn't just mean that they have access somewhere that they can access occasionally. This statistic measures people with their own IP address, so they have their own phone or computer or whatever, or laptop, and are accessing it on a very regular basis, like daily. So, out of 7.5 billion people on the planet, 4 billion at least, this was done in April, are on the internet all the time. And what are they doing? Well, one of the things they're doing is they're communicating. Out of those 4 billion, 3.2 of them are on social media. And again, social media measured in this way is, at least on a very regular basis, at least weekly. Most people are on social media daily. I will get to some of those numbers in a moment. But I guess what I'm just trying to say, both with those cookies examples and some of these big picture numbers, is to say that the world is online. And really, I think that if you want to, for an exporter, you can leverage this. You can say, well, you can either say that's a very scary thought, or you can say, okay, I can join in this. I can say, I can use the internet. I can use and harness the internet to say, okay, I'm going to use the internet to grow my business. So in answer of why do exporters need international websites? They need international websites because obviously the world is online. So a localized website, one that allows your local prospect to engage with and to feel comfortable with and to find allows you to do business. So a localized website allows you to get found, to be understood, to do business. And that's really the key of what we're going to be talking about now. But just before we do that, I'm actually going to launch poll number 2, which is, do you already have localized websites? Now, I just want to get a feeling for how experienced you are on this. Do you have localized websites for all of your export markets? Are you thinking about it? Is this something that interests you? Do you have them for all of your export markets? The vast majority of you are saying that you have some export market localized websites for export markets. And there's a very few of you, really a very small handful, who are saying you have them for almost all your export markets, for your main export markets. So well done that. So fantastic. I'm very pleased to hear that. I'm pleased to see that there is a good spectrum out there, and that many of you have already thought about this and have some export experience with your website. So you have some localized websites. That's terrific. Good, fantastic. Right, let's get on to now, what is a website that's localized? What are localized websites? And here, again, I think we're going to go through a couple of things that strike us when we look at a localized website. But first, we're going to talk about how the internet has, in a sense, changed how we adapt to do business. If you're going to have the internet, if you're going to have websites, then it changes how you do business. And just synthesizing that in one slide, I've come up with this. So really, the internet has allowed really a paradigm shift. So I don't think this is anything new or startling to most people. They will recognize this. The internet has made things client-focused. They've made things customer-centric. So your customer, whether that's B2B, B2C, or even B2G, B2 government, they sit at the center now in terms of control. They have access to information that they didn't used to have pre-internet, and they can communicate in ways more rapidly, which allows them to have, I guess, more of a say, more control. Your task, your mission, if you're into marketing, is to try and influence in a positive way those arrows that go from customer to customer or customer to company. On the right-hand side of your graph. So your business as a marketer is to influence it in a positive way to make those customers, those prospects, think of the company and pull the company towards the center as well. It's a very different environment than a pre-internet, when you could say also that the company sat more at the center and decided on that one-to-one relationship between clients or one-to-one between partners. A very binomial relationship. Today's environment is much harder, much more complex in that sense. So in terms of search engines and what that means for the world, let's take a quick look at where search engines are. Search engines, as you all know, basically organize the web. Otherwise, it's just a sort of huge bag of information, huge ocean of information. Search engines organize it and they rank it. Google is by far the largest search engine in the world. In Canada, it has a 93% market share. In Europe, it has also over 90% throughout Europe, also in the Middle East, Australia, and South America. It's very Google oriented as well. The two other huge search engines, Yandex and Baidu. Baidu is really the one to watch. Baidu in China, it has about 76% market share. It also has a growing presence in Southeast Asia. So if we take back and sort of look back in a sense and say, so how do search engines work? How do they organize? How do they rank? And if I can understand how they organize and rank the web, then I can understand how my website can be organized and ranked in the web. And here, I guess, looking at search engines, what you can say about them is that the search engines themselves are localized. So when you think of Google, as we saw, Google has sort of 93% market share, 96% market share, I think, in Canada. Sorry, Google in Canada is different from the Google in the USA, for example. It is different from the Google in the UK. Think of Google more as 190 different country Googles, separate Googles. Each Google then is focused on the individual searcher. So the search engine is also customer-centric, client-focused. It puts the person searching at the center. So you are basically, if you imagine sort of Google is or the internet is that haystack, Google goes in and finds the needle that is important, that is relevant to that searcher. Not necessarily what you want, but what the searcher wants. A good way of figuring this out as well is I asked Irina from Opportunities New Brunswick to put something into her Google sitting in St. John, New Brunswick. And I said, right, Irina, I love red shoes. I'm going out to buy some red shoes. Where should I buy them? So on the left, that's what you get when you put in red shoes in St. John, New Brunswick. Sitting in London, you get a very different view. You get a view of which is centric to me sitting in London. You get UK retailers. Actually, you get a Zalando, which is a German e-commerce base, but the UK side of it. And you get actually ones that are close to me as well. So, Google is saying what's important for me sitting in London is very different from what's important to Irina sitting in St. John, New Brunswick. The same goes obviously for ball bearings, for B2B, for services, for construction work, for maple syrup, for anything. Google figures out the person putting in the search. They're the person that counts. So their language counts as well. And this is when you get something called keywords. Keywords start to be really important when you want to attract Google. When you want to say, hey, Google, I am relevant to your searches when people search these things. Here's an example. We have a client who is involved in the train industry. He supplies parts to trains, and wanted a Brazilian website. It was very important to him that he had a Brazilian website because there's a big infrastructure program going on. He wanted to make sure that the people doing the tenders would think of them. And so we built this website, and it was really interesting to see because the translation was done very poorly, and we had to really take it apart and redo it because the keywords were wrong. And if we had left it as it was, which it was translated into Portuguese, you could understand it, but the keywords were all wrong. And so anyone searching for train in Brazil would look for trem. Anyone searching for train in Portugal is looking for comboio. Two very, same search engine, both are Google. Very different results, and therefore very different types of strategy and campaigns when you're looking at. So that's an example of keywords as well. And those keywords start to get very important when you're looking at export markets, because as they're not your home market, you need to know where to find those keywords, and that's not always so easy. Here's another example that's actually even more common. The difference is car in Spanish or in South America. And again, there's a big difference. In Mexico, a car is auto, and in Spain, it's coche. Very different search results if you're not using the right words. So again, these are examples of how to make your website, right for your searchers, to make sure that your prospects find you in the right markets. It's not a question of translation. It's a question of making sure that you're putting yourself in their skin. What would they look for? What are the words? How would they look for it? In what ways would they look for it? You know, and all of those things come into a localized website. So making your website fit for purpose for the local environment. On the next slide here, I have listed the 10 top criteria that we use to identify a localized website. So we'll say, you know, so you'll notice that adapted to local language, in other words, well translated, is 1 item out of 10. It's the most visible one because you see the words, but it is 1 out of 10. It's really important, for example, to host locally. It's very important to upload and download speeds, for example. Many websites will not be recognized by the search engine if it's not hosted locally. You need to have the right regulatory requirements in each market. If not, you will be fined in Europe if you are not GDPR compliant. And I'll get back to that a little bit later, as well as some examples. You need to be mobile enabled. The vast majority of people searching on the web are doing so on their phone. If you are going into South American markets, they will be looking at you on their phone. Same for China, same for India. These are all called mobile first markets for this reason. Very importantly, you need to have own your registered domain name. Now, I'm sure you all know what a registered domain name is. That, you know, .com, that .ca. In my case, it's ibt.onl, .co.uk in the UK. These are important to own. Please don't give them away. Don't let your distributor have them, for example. And I'll get back to that later when I go through some examples. Just as we talked about search engines being client-focused, customer-centric, searcher-centric for the whole web, social media is just as client-focused as well, and therefore you need to be as well. In terms of social media, we said about 3.2 billion people were on social media today. Facebook is the huge player in the market. You know, nearly, the statistics are actually mind-boggling. So 1 billion people log on to Facebook a day. Anyway, they're amazing numbers. But you know, there's some major markets where Facebook is not present, and China is the big one there. And anyway, we can talk about that if you want later. But let's look at a second for Facebook. What is Facebook really? In terms of marketing and for your international perspective, don't think of Facebook Canada, the one that you know. Facebook exists in over 100 different languages. And in terms of media marketing, it is very much country and market sensitive. So just as we saw those differences on sort of what Irene was searching in St. John, what I'm looking at in London for red shoes, you would see a similar difference in Facebook. For any kind of, if you're running Facebook ads, you will see a huge difference in those in each market. So think of Facebook as 100 different Facebooks, each one a different market. The same is very true of YouTube. YouTube is available in 76 different languages. It is, I highlight YouTube because it is one of the most cost-effective ways for an exporter to really develop and push content out there in international markets. If you've got a YouTube video of your company and it's in English, you don't have to translate it. You just have to put on some good subtitles and know how to market it properly. And it does wonders for your search ability, your ability to express and show product in new markets. So it's one of the top tips is, you know, really get on board for video exporters. And again, we can talk about that later or in questions if you like. I'm actually going to stop a second and launch, guess what, my third poll. This is, do you actively use social media today? Are you actually actively using social media and marketing for your business, either domestically or internationally? And some of you are, oh, oh, we suddenly got a whole, I was about to give you some results, and we suddenly got a whole bunch of new ones. I would say the majority of you use it domestically, but not internationally. But there's a good, say, third of you who are beginning to use it domestically, and a few of your key export markets. And we're really happy to see that and have that on board. That's terrific. So well done if you voted. That's fantastic. I'd really like to see that some of you are already using this in export markets. It's a challenging one to do, but it is very much worth it. These are responsive, good markets, and it's a great way of getting your brand recognition in. Right, closing the poll, and now let's go on to see how exporters use localized websites. So what are these localized websites? Now we know what the localized websites are. How do we use them? What do we do with them? And I want to start with one of the most companies that I admire so much, Apple. Guess what? Not exactly an SME, and I can't say that we've ever done their website. They don't need us. But what's really interesting for me to see is just how much they use international localization. So Apple doesn't have like a core domestic website and then, spin things off of it. They have 132 international websites. That's just for Apple. There's more for Apple phone, Apple Watch, Apple iPads, Apple, all the other Apple products, but just for that. So it's sort of similar to Google in that sense. They've created a vast empire of localized websites. And the Apple that I go on in the UK has a similar brand, a similar color, it has similar advice, but the feel of it is British, and it responds to my questions, which could be English questions, such as I could use English vocabulary. I could say where's my local Apple store? It'll tell me the one that's closest to me. It'll be geolocation. So Apple is an amazing case study of localized websites. But it is our conviction at IBT Online, and this is the core, the reason for that we exist. Really, our belief is that the web has now evolved to the point, and prices have come to the point where small, medium-sized companies can also now harness the web and really pull out some of the benefits and expand their businesses online. So for us, no matter which market or route to market you choose, there is a website localized that is for you, that benefits you. There are essentially two kinds of localized website that we see our clients taking. The first is sort of a standalone website. It's say, right, I really want to get into the, Mexican market. Right, I'm going to have a Mexican Spanish website. It ends with a .mx. I've got great in-market partners, and they're going to help me use that website, and I'm going to use it as a springboard for marketing, for trade shows, for finding new distributors, for finding in-market partners. But it's a standalone. It's not connected. For example, it's not e-commerce enabled. So you can't actually transact business on it, but that website, that standalone localized website, allows you to be found, to be understood, and hopefully your in-market partner can either do business from it, or that website redirects your traffic to your domestic base, to your domestic salesman, who then can do business. Another type of website that we see is an e-commerce enabled localized website. So this is obviously, it's got a few more sort of bells and whistles on it. It'll have a different type of security. It'll have different zones on it, and payment portals and so on. We have a lot of testimonials, case studies, and so on our website. And I would really urge you to go through some of them and see which ones resonate most with you. These are all testimonials of clients. Some of them said, I want a website in order to generate leads. I want a website to establish credibility. I want a website that helps me find distributors. and they will go through some of their experiences and say, you know, why they chose that type of website and things. So it's worth, you know, so if you go onto our website and go onto, you know, client testimonials or case studies and things like that and success stories, you'll see some of these, and you can sort of see which company most resembles you and try and see if you can get some inspiration from that. But whether they are talking about generating leads or finding the right partner, which so many of you flagged up in the first poll, for us, it's all about building global brands. And those brands have to be developed both from your domestic base and meshed very well with your localized websites. So if you're building a localized website, never ever forget that your domestic brand, that your core values have to be in harmony with your localized website. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But let's go through some examples. The first example I wanted to bring up was a company that's based in the US. And they don't make a very techy product. They make basically paper cutters. You know, they make dispensers, paper cutters. So that means that they have lots and lots and lots of distributors in each market. They'll have lots of segments. They sell to the florist, to the art supply, to schools, to retail, to food, you know, butchers, you know, people like that, and all different types of paper cutters and ribbon dispensers. So it's a difficult product to have any brand recognition in. That they very much say, you know, this is really hard. You know, ask someone who uses this every day. Ask your florist, what brand paper cutter do you have? They have no idea. But what you do want to know is the challenge of this company is to find really good distributors, several verticals in each market, and then to try and engage with the end client as well. Try and not lose sight of the end client, so that when the end client says, "Gee, you know, I wouldn't mind a new ribbon cutter or whatever," that its first come in mind is back into this company here. So it's a type of generating leads and identifying distributors. Those are the two key things that this company wants to do. So we first started building little websites for them in some of their key markets where they were doing very well: UK, Germany, Spain. And then we sort of branched out and they said, okay, this is actually doing really well, we'll go on. And one of the things they found was that this website allowed distributors to find them. So the best distributors they have now are the ones who are most active online and who then found them through those localized websites. You know, a localized website in Australia, you know, a local distributor would find them and say, that's a really interesting product, it fits what I want, and would contact them. So that was one of the key objectives of the website, which was matched. Another point was really interesting. This is a company who said, I've never had a window on my end client. I want to actually get the net, and I don't have a database of my end clients. And because, although it's not e-commerce enabled, the distributors now have to go onto that website in order to put in their orders. And this means that automated system allows the company to automatically generate a database of end clients across the world as the distributors put in the orders, so that their Bullman products are in charge of their marketing, they're in charge of their online presence and brand globally, and they have a better mechanism for identifying great distributors, and they have a mechanism also of finding their end clients. And these are all small sites, by the way. They have quite a few now. They've been doing this for a few years, but these are all, you know, 12, 14-page sites, so not big sites. This is, however, a very techy company. ASG, again, an American company, mid-sized, but they make very techy little products for the aeronautics and avionics industry. And one of the problems they have, the challenge they had, was that their in-market partner might have had great contacts within the avionics industry, but wasn't always an engineer. and had problems explaining all the techie parts of the product. So the website allowed the agent in each market to go and really explain, because very often they're selling to engineers, and really explain the product and engage with the engineers better. So their prospects were able to see the product in a different way, and that allowed them to really have a very, very rapid return on investment. And they've also just, rolled out a whole series of websites, starting off, I think, with China and Mexico. They started with those two. Those are their two biggest prospective markets, and have now rolled out to Japan, Brazil, UAE, and Russia as well. One of the things that happened, by the way, with this company was that we started building their international websites, which were all mobile enabled. They were all GDPR compliant, and so on. And then the company said, the problem is that we're moving far away. Our domestic website now looks poor. I've given you a screenshot of the domestic website on the top with that airplane coming out of it, Engineering, Manufacturing Support, ASG. The problem, it doesn't fit the screen because it wasn't enabled in any way. So, it was just like this long, it was just dated. And so they actually asked us, once we'd built the international ones, they said, circle back, because we circle back and redo our US one. So we've now redone their US one as well. And the reason for that is that it gets really important to make sure there's a cohesion and a flow and a harmony between all these websites. Because otherwise, there's nothing worse than going onto someone's website and suddenly it looks very, very different from what you're expecting. Right, let's talk quickly about some of the e-commerce e-commerce enabled websites. I saw on the attendance list that quite a few of you are already involved in e-commerce. There's a lot of stuff on our website if you want to go and dive down into this more. This is a very, very brief presentation on e-commerce, but there are basically three types of e-commerce. There's the big, platforms, the marketplaces, Alibaba, Flipkart, Zalando, Amazon, or else you can build your own and just strike out, and then you have to be quite techie for that. You just add the plugins and build your own. That's it's tough, but at least you own it. And then there's distributive platforms, and that's sort of like very specialist. Like, for example, if you're a specialist in electronics, then you might want to go onto a top distributor for electronics. Or if you make hardware, then you might want to go onto a hardware store. That is a specialist distributor platform. In each one of those cases, we argue that you can get around the big disadvantages of those by having a localized website, which then plugs into those platforms. So in terms of marketplaces, there's these three huge ones. The three big ones that you have there, but there's just a myriad of them. It depends where you want to go, but they all share the same criteria. They all really have they support you, and they have a lot of advantages, and they'll get you business. But you have to ask, whose brand is ultimately being developed here? Is it you, or is it Alibaba's? And for the long term, do you want Amazon to develop their brand more, or do you want to develop your brand more? And again, if you're on a distributor platform, you have a similar issue. It's just that it's a very specialized platform, either for more generalist side or a very, very specialized one. For example, only electrical products or only household products. But again, your brand, your company is up there, on display next to everybody else's for price, for everything. And again, we would advocate that a better solution would be, in fact, to have a localized site and then plug it into an Amazon or an Alibaba or a Lowe's or a Rexel or whatever. Give you some examples. This is a company, again, little company, and they make the most bizarre things. They make specialty coins. For example, they made all the coins for the Lord of the Rings, or they made all the coins for The Hobbit and Game of Thrones. So very specialized. They don't want to sell particularly on Amazon or anywhere else. They want to sell on their website. But how do you make sure that everyone can find them? They realized that some of their largest markets are outside the USA, and therefore started building websites. And we built them like a Germany website, but you can go back onto their website and directly buy in Germany, for example, or in Europe, onto their website. So that's using their own website for a very, very specialist product. Other companies, this is quite a large company or larger company, their problem really is that people think of their product as motor oil, and that is a generic product. They don't want a generic product. They want their product. And so they want everyone to think about them as synthetic oil rather than motor oil. So they have a very heavy marketing campaign, but it's really to develop that brand. And their objective is to drive traffic, get to the distributors, drive traffic to the e-commerce platforms, but with a strong website that is localized for the individual markets. The platforms then become like a logistics supplier. They become a place that does fulfillment, not brand development. So Amazon are developing their own brand in these markets, but have a logistics supply team either through distributors or through the market, those e-commerce marketplaces. Again, a very different strategy for that. And the third one I wanted to indicate was, again, a mid-sized company. Here, the challenge is that this is a company which has to punch above its own weight. It supplies to OEMs and first tier original equipment manufacturers, especially in things like the car industry and things. So they have to be absolutely clear that their sales and service is outstanding. And the best way they could do for that was to make sure that they had everything online. But again, it's an e-commerce enabled via their distributors. So their distributors can find the business for them and can act as after-sales service, logistics, and fulfillment, but they are in charge of their brand and their online space. So I guess I've really run through this very, very quickly, and I can see there's a lot of questions on this. I'm happy to go through some of them later, but our key that we wanted to just put out there was that whichever route to market you want, whichever route to market you choose for your export markets, whether it's via distributor or e-commerce, a localized website allows you to develop a brand. And that, in the longer term, is the ultimate goal of any company, really. It allows you, obviously, to have lead generation, to find distributors, and so on. But it's about brand awareness in the long run. Now, turning to our last thing, and then I'm going to take some questions. I can see there's quite a few. Help for New Brunswick exporters. I think, first of all, you've got a tremendous team there with Suzanne, Nirene, and all the team at Opportunities New Brunswick. Take full advantage of them. So I can say, really knock on their door. From our perspective, we are delighted to be able to present to you today and to offer any help we can. My mom always told me not to come to a party without some presents. So I thought, we'd give you some handouts at least during this webinar. On the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a toolbox, and it says handouts, 3 out of 5. And we've listed these handouts here for China. Whoops, sorry about that. For China, for Germany, and for Mexico. And you can drag them off that screen and put them onto your screen when you want. If you've got problems doing that, let me know and I will send them to you after the webinar. But you should be able to just drag them off for those. So I've included, I asked Suzanne and Irina some of the top markets that you're interested in. And I was told, you know, Europe, Mexico is of a lot of interest, China. So I put those 3 on for today. But we have lots more on our website. If you go to ibt.onl resources, you'll find lots of other resources and blogs and case studies and things. I also thought I would just put out there a couple, the 5 top things I would say, you know, if you're just starting out, if you're just looking at all this, a couple of top things. And this also comes from looking at some of your websites. So I did spend a bit of time looking at some of the websites from the people who have registered for this webinar. And one of the first things I'd say is make sure about security. Make sure your website has strong encryption, is a secure site. If nothing else, make sure that you know that on the top bar it says HTTP. Make sure it says HTTPS. The S stands for security and secure, and that's some types of encryption. In Google Chrome, for example, will start to push out websites that do not have an S. Already in Europe, if I go onto a website that says HTTP and there's no S on it, there's a great big yellow triangle that comes up and says, beware, not secure site. This does not, this does not bring security. This does not engender trust in your brand. Make sure your websites have proper security. Second point is regulations, and this is a tidal wave coming. Be aware of regulations in markets. In Europe, there's something called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, came in force in May 2018. It is being enforced. It will be enforced. If you are not compliant, it is really bad news. So make sure you are compliant with GDPR for Europe. If you're compliant with GDPR for Europe, you're hitting the top standard. And know that many other countries are looking at those regulations. Japan, Australia, Colombia, many other countries are looking at GDPR. Third, make sure that your websites are mobile enabled. Many of your export targets only really work on their mobile. Make sure that they have make sure that your website is truly mobile enabled. Domain names. Domain names are your online real estate. They don't give them away is the key. We find a lot of clients come to us and say, guess what? Well, I want to build a website in France. Build me a website in France. Okay, where's let's buy your domain name first. Domain name in France. Oh, I gave it to my distributor. Why would you do that? Why would you give away your online real estate? These are not expensive. A domain name can cost $15, $20. In some markets, they're a bit more, but you should pick the ones that are most that you really, really want to go to, and then buy them. Fifth and last, on social media. If you are going to embark on social media, plan it, organize it, and continue it. Some of the worst aspects that we see or worst practices that we see is someone who starts something on social media and doesn't continue. And then we have a situation where you got a blog that's 4 years old. You've got next upcoming events, and it's from last May. It doesn't look good. So if you're going to go on social media, embrace it. Go on it. Invest in it. Don't do it in a piecemeal way. So those are sort of some of the top takeaways, if you will, both the infographics, any other resources we have on our website, and those 5 points. With regards European websites as well, I would say we have an offer on our website at the moment with regards GDPR compliant websites. This is something which costs a lot of money, and because of experience we have been able to reduce some of those costs. And there's, if you are looking at a European website, there's some pretty good offer of some products that we can give you in terms of European websites which are fully GDPR compliant, and we can help you become GDPR compliant. So next steps, get in touch with us if you like, or get in touch with Suzanne or Irina, and happy exporting. I have noted that there's quite a few questions. Some of them are specific about Amazon and things like that, which I think I might segue away from and answer on a specific one, because that looks like a specific problem about joining the site about the platform on Amazon. So I will give a specific one on that, but I'll answer some of the other questions. One of the first questions I have here is, are there particular markets that are better suited to websites? From our perspective, no. All markets are good for websites. But what we can say is where is a good place to start? And you've really got three choices. Either you pick the largest markets, and that's USA, Europe, China, or more specifically Germany in Europe. So you just say those are the largest markets. I'll pick those markets to start my export business in, and launch there. Or you could say I have a really strong sales already and a fantastic in-market partner in Japan. I want to give him extra help because I know that we can do better. In that case, fine, build a Japanese website for that fantastic in-market partner. Obviously, don't give him the domain name, you keep that, but you're giving him a tool, which is a fantastic tool to use. He can then leverage that tool, and once you're starting to do that, you'll start to say, okay, now I can expand a bit further. They don't have to be big websites, they can be small websites, 10, 12-page websites, that's all you need. Another possibility is to say, we know that the French market is really important for us, but we're not sure how to price, what the competitors are, or whatever. A website can give you a window and do your market research for you. So that's another possibility. You have no sales somewhere, but you want to know what the market research, build a website. You've got tons of sales, but you know there's more potential, get a website and leverage it. Or you just said, I want to take advantage of the top largest markets, then just go for those ones. Another question I'm getting at from two people, and just a quick question. Yes, you will get the slide deck and the recording tomorrow in your email, so you will get all that we've gone through. You don't have to ask for it specifically. It'll come to your inbox. Two questions about price. Price is kind of like as long as a piece of thread. It's hard to work out a price, but what I can say is that we build websites for $6,000, for $12,000, for $120,000. It depends on the bells and whistles that you want. There is no point redoing certain types of designs and things like that if you've already got great design. So take anything that you already have and reuse it. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's not as complicated as that. What you need to get right is the strategy, the essence of it, and to make sure that it really is embedded and localized well, rather than it is a all bells and whistles website. You can start small and add. That's something that we see a lot of people doing as well. So don't be scared to say, I just want to sort of, a tester and go with that. That often works very well for companies. We're also getting questions about our distributor does our social media. There are two questions on that. So I'll answer that question as well. We often find that distributors play a great role for media, for marketing, for online marketing, for social media in various markets. They can be a tremendous asset. Nevertheless, they need a springboard to work from. So if you've got a localized website and you've got some social media coming off it, that is a very, very effective way of driving up your sales, without any doubt, in that market. Your distributor, is he also an expert in marketing? Is he also an expert in online media? Maybe yes, maybe no. They can certainly play a role in it. They can connect to it. They can suggest things. They can use it very effectively at trade shows. But I'm not always sure that they're the best to use in terms of the media creation, the marketing strategies, and such. So that's a delicate balance to play. But certainly involve your distributors and get them involved. But I wouldn't leave them ultimate responsibility. I've kind of used up all my time. I said this would take 50 minutes and taking 58 minutes. I'm sorry. I see there's more questions. We will circle back to you individually because they're very specific, those questions. Thank you so much for your time today. Please, please, please stay on for 2 seconds longer and do our survey. We're delighted to have been able to talk with you all today. And I've done all the talking, sorry about that. And share with you some of our experiences in online and using online tools for exporters. And we, happy exporting, everybody. And we look forward to one day coming out and seeing you all in New Brunswick. Thank you. Happy exporting, New Brunswick. Bye-bye.